Everybody able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. I like it when a plan comes together. All right. So, hold on. I'm trying to expand it, but I got to get, there we go. That's better. Everybody see that bigger?
Yes.
Okay. So today's quote was really for the eco-friendly Rotary Club. Major problems in the world are the result of the difference between how nature works and the way people think. So I just like that quote because I can't tell you how many times I accidentally throw something in the trash and my wife Antoinette picks it out of the trash and throws it into the recycling bin. It's just habit sometimes, and it is changing the way everybody thinks to be able to make that happen just a little bit better and make sure we're aware of it. So we'll go ahead and start the show. I don't have a bell because I'm not on the boat, so we'll just rattle ourselves and keep going. So for the four-way test today, let's see here. Hey, Alana, are you able to do the four-way test? Be great to hear your voice. Okay, maybe not.
Sorry, I'm just trying to balance a few things the hot second. Sorry.
No worries, no worries, no worries. Michael, would you mind doing the four-way test for us?
Absolutely. The four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth?
the truth?
Is it fair to all
Fair to all
concerned?
concerned?
Will it be
Better friendship?
Yeah. Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
We were doing so great there. It actually sounded wonderful. There's nothing, Craig, like trying to get a whole bunch of people synced to say something at the same time on a Zoom call. And delay is wonderful. I don't think, other than Craig, who we're going to announce here in a minute, that we have any guests. Am I missing anybody that somebody else sees? I don't think so. Okay. With that being said, then we do appreciate Craig being here. We will move on to today's presentation, and I will let Sam take it over from here to introduce Craig.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. When I started looking for speakers, I mean, I really dug deep and thought hard about the one person that I really wanted to hear from, and I'm so excited to share that Craig is here to talk about. I mean, it doesn't get any cooler than space, right? Like that's what we all want to hear about.
Yep.
So from satellite technologies and microwave communications, Craig really does know it all. I mean, this guy he's incredibly smart. He's done everything from network design and architecture to field engineering. I met him in 2016, worked for GCI up in Alaska, working on rural microwave contracts. And he's done everything from Alaska to oil and gas, down lower 48. You heard him talk, he's now in Seattle. He's been in and out of telecom over the years. He worked with Amazon Web Services, and now he's with Blue Origin. He's actually been back and forth between Blue Origin and Amazon Web Services. If you didn't already know this, Blue Origin is the Bezos offshoot, kind of like the Tesla and the SpaceX kind of story. It's a very similar thing. And Bezos, from what I hear, seems to be a great team player, and hopefully Craig can share some fun stories about some of the folks that he's met, just been in the same room with when he's overseeing these launches and things like that. So thank you, Craig. Thank you. I'm super excited. I know everybody else is going to be super excited to watch this video after it's posted online too. So big welcome again. Thank you so much, Craig. We'd love to hear about New Shepard from you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. And that was a great introduction. So Craig here. Again, thanks for having me. I got a little presentation that I put together, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing it. And it's pretty basic, but it gives me lots to talk about. So let me know if you guys can all see it.
Yep, can see it.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so go ahead and get started. So Sam kind of gave me a good little rundown, but I'll do it again. I started with Blue Origin back in the spring of 2019 after relocating from Alaska, where I lived for about 13 years. So far, I've done about 10 launches with the New Shepard program, which has been just absolutely fantastic. Every single launch just feels like the first one. It's really exciting being down there. I'll say one of the coolest things is when you hear those engines ignite and you feel it. and I'm in mission control. I'm a mile away from the launch pad. You just feel your seat start rocking. Nothing beats that, except for maybe the re-entry sonic boom that happens right around when the engines relight. I've got about 15 years of experience now in the IT field, mostly in the networking industry. One of the things I'm most proud of is I got here with 0 college credits. So I don't have any bills to pay in terms of student loans, which is really nice for someone in my age group. I grew up in Maine, spent a good 20 years of my first life, over there. Got laid off from an IT job, found a summer job in Alaska. I was doing horse-drawn covered wagon tours about 2007, 2008, 2009, and pivoted back into the IT field by moving to Fairbanks and working at an accounting firm. Moved down to Anchorage to work for a telecom provider, and then weaseled my way into GCI, where I eventually met Sam in 2016. Up until meeting Sam, most of my time at GCI was spent in the oil field. So if you're familiar with Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, right on the Arctic slope there, it's very cold, very desolate. I heard you guys talking about the sun and everything in Finland and in Seattle and whatnot. Up there is a whole nother realm. The sun goes like this in the summertime, and you just don't see it from November to January. So it's a very interesting work environment. I never want to put up a satellite dish at 40 below zero ever again. It was a great experience. I got a lot of character out of that, but never again. So right now I'm based in Kent, supporting the new Shepard program from our headquarters here. A lot of travel to our launch site in West Texas. I am exploring, right after this meeting, actually, I'm going to be talking with some of the folks down in Cape Canaveral about an eventual transition down to our orbital program with New Glenn, which I'll talk about a little later on in this presentation. So a little bit about Blue Origin. Blue Origin was founded in 2000 by Jeff Bezos, and this was founded off of his lifelong dream ever since watching Star Trek back in the 1960s and 70s with Captain Kirk and William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and the original cast there. And you can go back and I should have included in here, but when he gave his valedictorian speech in high school, he laid out the plan for Blue Origin at that time when he was 18 years old, which was millions of people living and working in space. He sees the Earth eventually becoming a sanctuary, being zoned residential and moving all the heavy industry and commercial applications out into space. So why mine the Earth when we can just pull in an asteroid and mine off of that? We only have one Earth. We need to preserve it. We need to take care of it. As population grows, increases, we can't sustain all that population on Earth. So years, tens, hundreds of years from now, the goal is to have cylinders in space that we can all live in, 5-kilometer long cylinders that are rotating, creating artificial gravity. They're called O'Neill cylinders, if you want to do a little research after this. But that's kind of the end goal of the Blue Origin program. We're not chasing launch contracts and things like that. It's a paradigm shift for how we see humanity in the future. So currently, Blue Origin has 2 primary vehicles that we're developing. The new Shepard, which is the one that I work on, which is the suborbital tourism rocket, but we also use the suborbital flights for payload missions. So one of our most active customers is NASA. One of the most recent payloads that we flew for NASA back in August was the descent lander system, which is a LiDAR camera system that is going to be used on the Artemis lunar lander module to help NASA pick a place to land in real time. So
hey, what's going on?
Oh my God. Oh, hot mic. Love it.
That's not Mike, that's Kimberly, I think.
That was Kimberly, but welcome to the world of Zoom, right?
Love it. We're all used to it now. So yeah, the new Shepard program, besides the payload applications for it, the real reason that we're focusing on tourism is to give people the opportunity to experience the overview effect without having to go through the full gauntlet of astronaut training and the costs and the time involved in that. So to give you some perspective, if you want to fly into space into an orbital launch, say on like SpaceX, I don't know if any of you guys watched the Inspiration 4 launch that happened over a few months ago. with 4 civilians: Jared Isaacman,
Yep.
Haley Arsenault, Dr. Cian Proctor, and Chris Simbowski. So they were all civilians. They still had to go through 6 months of rigorous astronaut training in order to do this. And the cost per seat for an orbital launch is right around 50 million right now. We offer an experience not the same as orbital, but you still get that microgravity experience. Don't know what the price is yet, but it's not $50 million. We don't advertise our pricing yet, just because it's custom at the moment. We're still developing the program. Once we get a lot more mature, the pricing will compress down and it'll be a lot more accessible. But we've already seen, I don't know if any of you watched the William Shatner launch that happened back on October 13th, I believe was the date of that. If you saw him when he got out of the crew capsule and explained his experience, the words that really stuck with me are, "I never want to recover from this." And that's the experience that we want to give to people on New Shepard, is when they come out of that crew capsule after seeing the Earth and seeing how fragile it is, that they don't recover from that and that they take that experience and do good. So we call that the overview effect. And as we start getting more and more astronauts, I think we'll start seeing more and more of the impact of that over time. Another thing we're developing too is the Orbital Reef, which is going to be a commercial space station. So the International Space Station is slated to be retired in 2030. And we don't have a program, at least for NASA, in conjunction with ESA and Roscosmos, to do anything about that. So NASA's leaving it up to the commercial space to take care of this. So we've partnered up with a few different companies like Sierra Space and Redwire to develop this orbital reef. And we should see that deployed by the end of this decade, which would be really, really exciting. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff being developed with that as well. So I mentioned I'm based here in Kent. We have facilities in West Texas, about 2 hours outside of El Paso. That's where we do our New Shepard launches. That's where we test our BE-3 engine, which is what powers the New Shepard, the BE-3U, which is the second stage engine for New Glenn, as well as BE-4, which is the first stage engine for New Glenn. So a little bit about New Shepard. New Shepard is designed to be a 6-seat suborbital vehicle consisting of a crew capsule, which you'll see here up on the top, and the propulsion module. We had our first human flight on July 20th, which had Jeff, Mark Bezos, Wally Funk, and Oliver Damon. And Wally was a hoot. I don't know if you know a little history about Wally Funk, but she was one of the women trained as part of the Mercury program, and she blew away all the men in all her tests and agility and everything else. But it was a different time back then. She was passed over, and I think as a gesture of good faith, Jeff offered her one of the first seats in suborbital flight to give her the experience that she truly deserved. And in the weeks leading up to it, she was calling in. We were having web conferences with her. She's probably the most hilarious person I've ever met. And I suggested to our leadership that we should just hire her as our chief morale officer and have her just go around the office and just pump everybody up, because she's so good at that. I mean, she's just so full of energy. She's amazing. So since that flight, we've done 2 more flights. Our second flight had William Shatner, Chris Bosshausen, my boss, Audrey Powers, which was really exciting, and Glenn DeVries. I mentioned before, we have payload customers such as NASA and lots of universities. We've done over 10 payload missions with them. So the crew customers, they experience about 3.5 minutes of microgravity. So they unlatch from their seats, they float up, they have a great time. They look out the windows, these giant windows, they see space. The crew capsule is rotating at 3 degrees. So you get a full 360 view, and then you start coming right back down. And on the descent, the astronauts can experience up to 5 Gs, which is a lot. But we've designed the crew capsule in a way that they don't really feel it too much. Considering that this is the eco-friendly Rotary Club, I should point out that our rocket is actually eco-friendly. If you don't take into account all the processing to create liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, we just burn it into water vapor. So one of the really cool things, I'll tell you a little story about how I got hired on or got offered my job at Blue Origin. I was down in West Texas and we had just got done doing a major network upgrade. We did a rack and stack, got rid of all of our old gear, put in new gear. We were down there for 2 weeks. And on the last day of that, there was an engine test for BE3PM. So we go stand about 250, 300 yards away from the test stand. The wind's blowing right in our direction. The engine goes off, big plume, lots of noise. We're wearing hearing protection and everything. And the exhaust plume just starts coming our way. And it's water vapor. And it just rains on us. And I'm like starting to get wet. And at the conclusion of the engine test, my colleague turns to me and he goes, "So do you want to work here?" Like, how do you say no to that? How do you say no to that? So our propulsion module on landing lands itself on the landing pad. And so far, that's been a smashing success. I sit right by the GNC guys, the guidance, navigational, and control guys, and they're just some of the most brilliant people I've ever met. They just think at a whole different level. And these are the guys that program the autonomy of the rocket, and everything is autonomous. So with about 5 minutes to go, we hand over control to the flight manager on the propulsion module, and we're just there to watch and keep an eye on things, but everything's automated. There's no interaction. The crew does not fly the rocket flies itself, which makes the training, it only takes 2 to 3 days to train one of our astronauts to go up on New Shepard. So not only is the cost lower, but the time investment is a lot lower, which makes this a lot more accessible for folks. I want to show you a recap of our latest, the Bill Shatner flight. So hopefully you guys can see this. If not, I'll send out the YouTube link so you can watch it.
We see it.
Hey, Craig.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hey, just super quick. If you do stop share, reshare, there's a little checkbox that says share audio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Share sound. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, let's try this again.
Laura, when your father became the first American to go into space 6 decades ago, it took the entire resources of a nation state. And today, you guys can do it in a completely different way. That, for humanity, is what's called progress.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, command engine start, 2, 1,
New Shepard has cleared the tower and is on its way to space.
We are weightless. Oh my goodness sakes.
Oh, check this out. Oh my God.
Oh, you just let go when you go up? Oh.
Holy.
There we go, the drogue's lifting out the main parachutes.
Always there for me.
Welcome home, astronaut.
All right. Well, that's pretty exciting, huh? So fun fact about that launch, that was our launch that we had on December 13th. Sorry, there are so many of them, I can't keep track of the dates anymore. But that was actually my first launch that I was qualified to be a mission control operator. So prior to this mission, most of my time had been spent working in our engineering back room. And for those of you who've seen Apollo 13, think of the engineering back room as that room where the guys came up with that crazy contraption. That's where all the engineers live. So we have mission control, or we call the front room, and that's where all the operators. So we have the booster operator, the capsule operator, ground, flight director, safety, INCO, which is integrated communications, the role that I run, Capcom, and also the FAA. They want to be a part of that as well. So on a launch day, our hours are really jacked up. So we generally target about 8:30 a.m. Central Time for our launch time. I roll onto site about midnight, and it's usually a 12 to 14-hour shift that I work on a launch day. We start rolling out the vehicle, pretty early in the morning. We get it out to the launch pad, get it erected up there, connected to the umbilicals. We fire it up. We do checkouts on all the avionics systems, make sure that all the sensors are working, everything's good. That takes, a couple hours to do. Once we're all happy with the way that the vehicle systems look and the ground systems look, then we start propellant load. So we load liquid hydrogen, we load liquid oxygen, we load helium onto the vehicle. From there, then we start conditioning the engine. We load our astronauts onto the vehicle. We make the vehicle escape enabled. And what that means is, we have living people on the crew capsule on a live rocket with lots of explosive energy in it. If we detect any sort of anomaly that could cause any issues to public safety, to human safety, we just jettison the crew capsule. So there's a solid rocket motor in the crew capsule. It'll escape out. It won't be a very fun experience for the astronauts, but they'll survive. And that's what matters. And in my role as integrated communications is absolutely critical. We're required to be able to talk to the vehicle, to receive telemetry from the vehicle, as well as communicate with the astronauts at all times. If communication systems go wrong, we just scrub and we try again. What do I do when I'm not doing launch operations? Well, we're always looking to improve and iterate. There's always improvements to be made to the rocket, to the communication systems. We're looking at ways of, having better video quality and things like that. So it's continuous improvement. For those of you with aerospace backgrounds, things are done in blocks. So we're right now we're in block 1, and we're starting to get ready for block 2 and eventually block 3 to continually iterate on the program and make it better and make it cheaper and more accessible. One of the coolest things that I get to do is spend time in our hardware in the loop lab, which is you walk into this giant lab, and it's all the avionics gear that's on the rocket and on the crew capsule, so that we can test our software, we can run test flights, we can train on it. On Thursday, I'll be in the lab for about 6 hours running mission simulations, running off nominal procedures, emergency procedures, so that if anything weird happens during a launch operation, it's muscle memory for me. I can run through our anomaly resolution process, no problem, get things sorted out. We either scrub, we launch, whatever, but trying to make this all muscle memory for us so that it's no surprises. So the only way that you can do that is practice, practice, practice. So I spend a good 20 hours minimum every month training, a lot more leading up to a launch, as well as helping out some of our other business units. I work a lot with the new Glenn team, the giant orbital rocket we're developing out of Cape Canaveral, and one of the purposes of the new Shepard program was to kind of figure all this stuff out before we go do the really hard stuff, which is the orbital stuff. So we figured out how to launch the rocket. We figured out our ground systems. Now we're sharing that knowledge with the new Glenn program so that they are ready to go. So I'm going to show some picture galleries here, and these are all publicly accessible, photos, videos, and stuff. Just due to the nature of what I do, I had to make sure everything here was publicly available information due to the fact that I'm assuming there's some non-US citizens on this call. So everything I say is public knowledge here. I'm not going to give away anything proprietary. But here's a really good shot of the valley here where we launched just north of Van Horn, Texas. Absolutely gorgeous area. our camera crews, drone crews have done phenomenal jobs, but you see here the RSS first step, our crew capsule coming in under 3 main chutes, descending at a rate of about 15 miles per hour. And then before it hits the ground, puff of air, nice smooth landing. They barely even notice it. After every launch, the next day we all have lunch with the astronauts, all of us on the launch crew, to get their feedback and kind of see if there's any ways we can improve the experience for them, because they're paying a lot of money for this experience. We want to make sure they get the most out of it. And all the feedback we've gotten so far is that it was just the smoothest of rides, and we love to hear that. So we want to keep it that way. Here's a great shot of tail 4, our booster, coming into land here at the north landing pad. So I mentioned before that one of the other things that we do down in West Texas is develop engines and test engines. And here's a really good shot of the B4 engine here testing just at dusk. And I was actually watching this from about a mile away. And this is the B4 engine, which puts out about 550,000 pounds of thrust. And standing about 2 miles away with double hearing protection, I couldn't hear for about 2 hours after this. And you just feel it resonate through your entire body. And there's going to be 7 of these things on the rocket. So one cool little fact about this is out at Cape Canaveral, they make everybody go away about 5 miles. If you were standing within 1 mile of the rocket while it was on the pad getting ready to launch, and all the engines were lit and they're running at full power, the shock wave from that would kill you. So it's an immense amount of power. It's just absolutely incredible, the amount of power. These BE-4 engines are also going to be flying on ULA's Vulcan rocket, which you should see sometime this year. Vulcan's going to run 2 of our engines as opposed to 7 on the New Glenn. But you should see 2 launches of Vulcan this year, which is going to be really exciting for us to see our BE-4 engines finally go into space. ULA is not planning on recovering our engines, but we fully plan on reusing all of our stuff. So yeah, so that's the BE-4. Here's you had mentioned the water tower. There's the largest water tower in North America right there. We just completed construction of Launch Complex 36 down at Cape Canaveral. So this is, we're ready. We've built the ground infrastructure, we're ready. We're hoping to launch sometime next year, the first mission for New Glenn, which is just going to really open the door to millions of people living and working in space. We can't put millions of people into space on New Shepard. We got to do it on a heavy launch vehicle. So this is the start of that. And as with New Shepard, we will continue iterating and improving on this. And in parallel, you see SpaceX developing Starship, which is really, really cool to watch right now. And one thing about aerospace, we all root for each other. You know, obviously we're competitive, and you know, maybe at the sea level, they don't necessarily all root for each other. But down here at the engineering level, we all pause work and watch the SpaceX launches. We watch Astra launches. We watch Virgin Orbit launches. We watch them all because it's super exciting. Because in the end, we all have the same goal, I think, but we're just going about it different ways. So it's an exciting time in the space industry. It's almost like there's a launch every couple days now. SpaceX has done 135 launches now. They've landed their booster 101 times. It's becoming routine, and that's great. That's what we want. We want this to become routine. However, we don't want what happened to the Apollo program to happen in space where people lose interest. So that's why we make such great videos and have such good production values, is we want to keep people engaged and keep people interested in space. Just, you know, we want to keep it going. And as you see there, there's our cute little sign. We're building the interplanetary road to space. And here's a good look of overhead. That's the New Glenn Pathfinder. So this is not a real rocket, but it's a simulated rocket. So this was a cool little thing that we did a couple weeks ago to test our ground systems equipment. to test our transport erector, our transportation systems. So we departed this from our facility in Merritt Island and drove it all the way out to the launch complex to the vertical assembly building, connected it, made sure everything fits good. So we're ready to go when we deliver the first New Glenn rocket. And I kept it pretty brief on there because I figured you guys would probably have some questions. So I'm going to open up the floor.
Wow, thank you, Craig. I'm like squirming in my seat. I've got so many good questions, but I'll start with just a super simple one while people are kind of getting their mind together. Whenever you and I first talked about this, one thing that was really informational to me, I had no idea, just to be honest. I didn't know that NASA wasn't in the space business anymore, you know, like in terms of actually shooting rockets up into space. I didn't understand that. So could you kind of walk me through kind of like that first conversation we had? Could you explain a little bit about that? So what is it that you know, this commercial space business, whatever you want to call it, could you tell us a little bit of history about that as you see it?
So I will correct you. NASA is flying rockets. So SLS, Space Launch System, is a NASA developed and will be a NASA flown system. And we should see that they're targeting March, which I think is a little aggressive. Probably sometime in June, realistically. But that's what's taking us to the moon. That's what's powering the Artemis mission, which if you remember back during, it was Mike Pence, I believe, announced that we were, you know, going back to the moon in 2024, which isn't happening, but it's a great goal to set. So I think the real push, and I forget what her name is, but she just left NASA. And she was the real push to commercialize space, because the funding from Congress has just been dwindling year over year. The amount of the NASA budget compared to the rest of the budget as a percentage just isn't keeping in line with where we need to be in space. So it was decided, you know, 20 years ago, let's start empowering these private space companies to provide our launch services to bring these costs down. And we've seen that with SpaceX. SpaceX has really brought down the launch cost for NASA to where they can focus on the science of the mission as opposed to the launch of the mission. So it cuts down on a lot of their operational costs. And you know, NASA never was really exploring anything reusable, which opened the door for SpaceX and Blue Origin and other companies to look at reusability. Which is really what's going to drive down the cost per kilogram to launch. Excuse me.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
So
Any
what?
other-
Go ahead. Anybody else have other questions? Go ahead, Mike.
So I live about 25 miles south of the Kennedy Space Center, and the SpaceX launches have captivated us so much. First of all, you watch them on your computer. They're on TV too, but the computer coverage of it follows that booster rocket down, and you're able to see the altitude and the speed as each diminishes. And almost always, whether it's a barge landing or landing back at the Cape, it is more exciting, I think, than the liftoff of the rocket. And then, in addition to that, we're now watching these Starlink chains of satellites go over that Musk has launched, and it's like watching a bunch of inline skaters in the sky. It is just incredible what's been going on in the past few years. And I guess my question to you is, why didn't NASA ever figure out to bring these boosters back the way Musk figured this out?
That's a great question. They, you know, it's probably more of a cost of development thing where they, I would only be speculating what NASA's thoughts behind that were. I think to NASA, cost isn't as much of a concern as it is for a company that relies on private investment. So NASA can just ask for money from the government and they'll get it for the most part. A company like SpaceX has to be smart with their money. So I would only speculate why NASA never went that route, but it could also be because you had a lot of old space people that were like, nah, that's a problem kind of in space still, is there's a lot of old thinking. that we don't do things that way. And SpaceX and Blue Origin, these companies are kind of disrupting that old space thought, and trying to really commercialize it and make it more agile. So sorry, I could only speculate on what NASA's thoughts on that were.
Well, and if I may, why don't you have any college credits?
Oh, so I mean, it all goes back to like, it goes back to when I got my first computer when I was in like 6th grade, and I got so enthralled with it that I decided this is what I'm going to do for a living. I got my first industry certification between my 8th grade and freshman year summer break, and just kind of focused on that and decided it was what I was going to do. So I got the industry certifications and the experience, and that's really all I've needed at this point now. You know, if I had to go back, I probably would have enjoyed the college experience. And I'll be honest, I tried back in 2019 to go to college and failed miserably at trying to do a full-time job with lots of travel and trying to get a degree at the same time. So I just accepted, hey, I've got plenty of experience and I've got a good resume, so I probably don't need it at this point.
That's awesome. That's nice to know. I'll tell my 14-year-old grandson he just finished building his first computer.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and like companies like AWS and these FANG companies are really not interested anymore in, you know, did you go to the right college? Do you have the right degree? It's can you get the work done, and can you work well with the team that you're assigned to?
Right.
And
I'm sorry I missed some of it because I was on a phone call with my contractor, which is a long, sad story that everybody else here knows about and you don't care about. What are the qualifications? I mean, I know you put Michael Strahan up in space because he can bring a lot of publicity to it, but it's not the same sort of astronaut training as is for NASA astronauts, correct?
That's correct. Really, the only qualifications we have are height and weight, and Michael Strahan was right at the very top of that, right at the top of that limitation. So
and there goes my dream.
Yeah, kiss me goodbye.
But like,
hey, maybe you guys could go together. That'd probably qualify.
Oh.
Calling nobody else, just us, Kimberly.
Yeah, I'll be the oldest woman ever in space, and Denise can be the first Dutch woman in space.
Yeah.
And you know, when we manifest a flight with crew, we, you know, balance the weight too. So we have a pool of astronauts. So if we had one like Michael Strahan, we'd probably grab some folks on the other side that would offset his height and weight a little bit.
The Twiggies and the Michael Strahans together.
Exactly.
He probably doesn't know what
your
Twiggy
words,
is.
not mine.
The thin models and the Michael Strahans. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the one place I never lie when I had to go on a helicopter and the Army said, how much do you weigh? That's the only time I never lied about my weight.
always go over on bush planes. I always go 50 pounds.
Always go over on bush planes. Yeah. Bush planes and helicopters. I'd always overestimate by 20 pounds.
Yeah. Weight and balance isn't important if you're flying. Don't worry about it.
Not important at all, especially on small aircraft. It really doesn't matter. And you don't have to secure your loads either. They can just go into the back of the plane.
So what is the training like for somebody like Michael? I mean, obviously they have to learn how to act with the G-force and what to do in weightlessness and that sort of stuff. But what is the training like?
Yeah, so the training for it takes about 3 days. So the astronauts generally arrive on site about 3 days prior to launch. And then we start the training with them. So they work with our crew member 7, which will either be Kevin Sprague or Sarah Knights right now. And Kevin was the guy in the black that you saw in the video walking behind everybody. He's a former F-16 fighter pilot. He's got a really great resume, really great guy. So either him or Sarah, depending on who's crew member 7 for that, we have an astronaut training center at our launch facility where we have a mock-up of the crew capsule. So they'll go through the simulations of all the vibrations, the sounds, all the timeline stuff. So like, here we're going to separate the crew capsule from the propulsion module. You'll hear a really loud sound. And at that point, a light will come off that you can unbuckle your seatbelt. So it's really, most of it is timeline training, emergency egress training, how to get in and out of your seat. Because when you're in microgravity, you can't just get up out of your seat. and you can't just get back into your seat. You have to roll in and out of your seat. So there's a specific
Oh.
method where you grab onto a latch and kind of roll yourself into the seat. So that's there is some of that training involved in. But it's not like an orbital where you got to spend 6 months doing, you got to do the what's the term, centrifugal, getting
Oh, yeah. For the G forces.
Centrifuge. You don't have to go through any of that sort of stuff. So we want to make space accessible to just about everybody. So we wanted to make the investment of time and training to where anybody with any schedule can handle it.
So it's about as long to train for a space flight as it is to get through TSA. That's good to know.
It's about right these days, especially SeaTac.
A little bit shorter. Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you.
Welcome.
First, I just want to say it's cool. I used to live in Kent, and I lived in Alaska as well. Or I didn't live in Alaska, but visited Alaska. But I wanted to ask if you've ever done like the been on the plane where they dive and you kind of get that.
Yeah, this the vomit comet.
The vomit comet.
Yeah,
I
have. So we actually back in 2019 we pitched our group. So I work in the software architecture group, even though I'm not a software architect. But there's about 12 of us, and these are the guys that program all the avionics gear and as well as the GNC guys. And we had pitched as a team building exercise to fly us all to California to do the vomit comet, and they said no. But they sent our media team, so that was cool.
No, it's not cool if you don't get to go when you pitch
Well,
it.
I know. I'm trying to make light
You're
of it.
spinning it, but that's good. Yeah.
That was a nice spin. That was a nice spin.
That was a nice
but
spin.
Kevin, our crew member 7, worked on that for a while, and still kind of volunteers with them on occasion. They just did a thing a couple months ago where they flew a lot of folks with disabilities, and he was a big part of that.
Cool.
But if ever given the opportunity, yeah, I would totally love to get in the vomit comet and give it a shot. Really, I'd love to get on New Shepard and experience microgravity for real.
Right.
But I got to keep saving my nickels for that.
There's a music video that was recorded, I think, in the vomit comet, and
yeah, OK Go, I think did that.
Yeah.
And there's Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller. He and Teller went in the vomit comet, and he wrote a really great story about his experience in the vomit comet.
That's pretty cool.
You should, read up on some of the experiences, because you're pretty much guaranteed to get sick, which is why they call it the vomit comet. And hearing about that whole experience is just absolutely amazing and totally worth it to me. I would get sick all day to experience that.
Go ahead, Sam.
So I have so many questions, Craig, but the first one, the easiest one is, you said they were going down 15 miles per hour.
When they're under main chutes, yeah.
When they hit, I noticed there was like a big plume of smoke. Like, is that, are you saying it's like the impact of like I'm not comparing it to a car accident, but like 15 miles per hour and then hitting a rubber bumper?
So they descend under chutes at 15 miles an hour, but before they touch down, you see this big puff. We soften that landing. I can't explain exactly how we do it for reasons, but we soften the landing intentionally. So
it's got like a last minute,
like a little retro rocket or something.
Yeah, there's a little, exactly.
A little something there.
There's a little something that, nice.
Your words, not his.
Again,
blow up the pillow.
It could be farce. It could be farce.
They blow up the pillow.
Yeah. Cool.
Hey,
my other
go
question
ahead.
was I watched there's a really great program. I don't know who makes it. It's on Disney Plus, but I think it's Nat Geo. It's space. Oh gosh, now it's Among the Stars, and they do quite a few walkthroughs, like from the eyes of the astronauts, and they're all going to Kazakhstan. So, like, is there anything you can share in terms of the technology and like comparisons? So you brought up a couple of different industries and folks who are in the U.S. that are doing this. Is there anything else happening globally that we should know about?
Well, so when you talk about Kazakhstan, you're talking about Baikonur, which is the Roscosmos launch site. And for the longest time, the U.S. didn't have any launch vehicles that could send our astronauts, our US astronauts to the International Space Station after the retiring of the shuttle program. So we had to contract out Roscosmos on the Soyuz rocket in order to get American astronauts to the space station. Now that we've qualified Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule to carry our astronauts, we no longer really need to require or rely on Roscosmos and Baikonur to provide our launch services for us. The Soyuz is a fantastic rocket. I mean, that is the most reliable rocket ever made. But why give money to the Russians when we can do it ourselves?
Yep. Cool. Well, I have a question based on, go ahead. Go ahead, Andrew. We'll go ahead. I'll finish with my question. Go ahead, Andrew. Dave. Sorry.
Well, going back a little bit when Mike was talking about reusability, the shuttle program was partially reusable. I mean, and the solid rocket motors came down in the ocean, and 2 ships, excuse me, picked them up, brought them back, and they got sent back to Utah and refurbed, and then sent back. So they had quite a supply chain set up, but it was only really worthwhile because of how many missions there were over the years, for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And, the cost benefit, you never see anything really to say, did they actually save money by reusing the rockets or just dumping them in the ocean? Because it takes a lot to refurb anything. Now, of course, SpaceX has brought that further along where they don't have that much to refurb between flights for their boosters. But the shuttle itself was obviously reusable, and the 2 solid rocket motors, the only thing that didn't come back was the external tank. So NASA did do some reusability, but again, the cost benefit ratio, one could argue it, one way or the other if it was worthwhile. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, you can still book that Vomit Comet is still operational. So you guys can still sign up for a flight if you want to puke while you're on a plane.
$7 or $8 grand a seat, unfortunately.
Well, that's a lot better than 50 million bucks. Whatever.
That's true.
Anyway,
Craig.
Yeah.
So Dave, who just addressed you, is I guess you'd call him a docent at the Kennedy Space Center. He will guide you on tours. Is that right, Dave?
Well, maybe when they fully open again, they're still pretty restrictive as far as what's going on. People still have to wear masks. They have to social distance. And so when you're meeting with the public and people coming from all different countries, they don't want us out there yet till basically this virus goes away a lot more than it has as of late. So yeah, I haven't been out there now. It'll be 2 years come March that we haven't been out there.
Well, I'll come look for you, Dave. When I go down, I plan on going to our facility in Merritt Island here in the next few months once they allow me to travel there.
Yeah,
I need to go check out the facility. So when I do, I'll come find you.
And I'll show you the old stuff, and you can show me the new stuff.
Absolutely, I'll give you a tour of our stuff if you give me a tour of your stuff.
I think, Greg, I think if you come anywhere near the Melbourne down to where I'm at area, you're gonna have 30 people wanting to take you out for lunch and drinks. I'll tell you that right now.
Not gonna say no to that. I'll just make more time.
Cool.
I'm trying to convince my other half to move to Florida, so the longer we can stay down there and have a good time, because I do want to move to Cape Canaveral. I want to do the orbital stuff. I want to watch rocket launches from my backyard every week.
Yep. We actually had to stop the meeting last week for a rocket launch. It sucked, but we had to watch it.
I just wanted to add one more thing. They did open or will be opening a new facility at the Visitor Center that has a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket hanging up on the ceiling, various capsules, some mock-up, some real capsules, like the Orion capsule that flew a test mission a couple of years ago now, maybe 3, I don't know. But anyway, so they've expanded the rockets, and I don't know if Blue Origin, I'll have to see if they have a capsule or something there, because they have lots of different vehicles that are
Yeah,
currently
you know
going to
what?
fly.
I'm gonna ask about that, because I know our only new Shepard vehicle right now that's not in our fleet is in Florida, but it's at our facility there in Merritt Island. It's in our lobby when you walk in. So that's booster 2.
Yeah.
Booster
You're
1
right.
Yeah, booster 1 is in pieces, but booster 2, which is what we did an escape test on mid-flight to prove our escape system. And we retired Tail 2 after that, toured it around the country, and then parked it at Merritt Island. But I'm sure Jeff has plans for our stuff once we retire it. Like Tail 3 will go in a museum somewhere when that gets retired, as well as, Nose 1 will probably end up there, and Nose 2 I think is going to end up at the Smithsonian when it's all said and done.
As a real quick, I know we're running out of time here, but it's an eco-friendly club, and I'm also sitting across from my eco-friendly wife, who always screams, "What about space junk?" And I actually had an uncle in the Air Force, and his job was to monitor space junk. Kind of does Blue Origin have kind of a plan to stop, kind of control what gets lost up in space and tracked and covered? Because that is an issue. It's an issue for your launches. It's an issue for a lot of stuff. If you go to stuff in space and track it, you can see all the stuff from the 60s that was launched up there.
Oh yeah, it is a huge problem. In fact, China just lost one of their satellites this week due to space debris. And Russia did that ASAT test a couple months ago that just created even more debris, put it in the path of the ISS. That's going to be a problem. I don't know if we have any plans. We have an advanced development program, kind of like a Skunk Works, that's doing things in secret. So maybe they are. I don't know. But I know that there are a lot of companies targeting space cleanup. Because if you've never heard the term Kessler syndrome before, if you want something that's going to scare the crap out of you, go read about Kessler syndrome and how realistic it is and how close we were just a year ago to initiating Kessler syndrome. So there's plans, and a really good guy to follow, Jonathan McDowell, is a guy on Twitter. And he catalogs and monitors all this stuff in orbit. And he's a great resource to follow if you want to get some more information on what's going on with our orbits and what's out there. So cool. Jonathan McDowell is who you want to go to for anything orbit related or space junk related.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, not funny, but I got to see some of the first videos of shuttle coming back with paint flecks in the windshield. And it's just amazing to me that stuff's up there, and it's something I know we got to take control of. However, we can't stop space exploration either. We have to do that.
No, yeah, we have to do both in parallel. We have to keep exploring. We have to clean up the mess that we've left up there. Otherwise, we're not going to have capabilities of having satellites outside of or in low or medium Earth orbit. Geostationary is probably going to be fine for the most part, but low Earth and medium Earth are going to be trashed if we don't take care of things. And if we do run into a Kessler syndrome situation, we're not recovering from that for a long time. And you think of something like a Carrington event bringing down the world economy, Kessler syndrome would be way worse. And that's when you invest in fiber optic companies.
It's from one satellite guy to another. I mean, we have some common. You had them as employers, I have them as clients. Some people out of Alaska, and because I've been with Mr. Duncan and some others, and and your other boss there too. I've been to his flight hangars many times. It's something that people need to pay attention to, and we have to keep doing it because it's the only way we're going to get communications back and forth. But listen, we could go with this forever, but I think we need to but maybe what we could do is get you back in a couple months, kind of update us, because I think this was a pretty hot topic for all of us. Nice job, Sam. Craig,
Agreed.
this is absolutely fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to come back and do this in a few months. I think we'll have some more exciting news to share. Our new Glenn timeline should be a little more in stone. We'll have a couple more human-rated flights, maybe another payload flight. I can't tell you exactly when and how we're flying, but we are. So, keep an eye on us over the next few months. You'll see a lot more activity coming from us. One of the things we're talking about publicly is we may even build a new launch site somewhere else in the world. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, things would be cool. So yeah, I'd love to come back in a few months and give an update and maybe do a little more expanded Q&A session.
That'd be great. And I won't talk so much at the beginning, so we can just dedicate all our time to you, because that'll happen.
You got regular business you got to do.
Yeah, it is cool, but it's truly fascinating. And for those of us, a lot of us are on the Space Coast. We've grown up. Dave's grown up with it. I've watched. I've been to shuttle. It's just awesome. So with that, guys, we'll go, because everybody's dropping like flies. Thank you, Craig. Thank you very, very much, guys.
Thanks for having me, everybody. This was a pleasure.
And we'll end with the motto for Rotary: service above self.
Service above